This court has no authority over me. I do not recognize your system, rules, or jurisdiction at all.
The courtroom camera catches the exact second Arrogance walks in and takes a seat. The man standing at the defendant's podium isn't nervous. He isn't confused. He isn't scared. He's smirking. Arms crossed tightly across his chest, chin slightly raised, eyes filled with the kind of confidence that doesn't come from innocence, but from believing the rules simply don't apply to him. Judge Judy hasn't even finished her opening sentence when he leans forward and delivers the line that makes the room go quiet. I don't consent to this court. There's a brief pause, the kind that feels heavier than shouting. A few people in the gallery exchange looks. Someone lets out a small, disbelieving laugh. But the man doesn't stop. He doubles down, explaining without being asked that he is a sovereign citizen. Not a defendant. Not a resident. Not subject to statutes, codes, or what he calls corporate courts. According to him, judges only have authority over contracts, and he never signed one. He calls himself a free man, untethered from laws written for everyone else. The confidence in his voice is almost theatrical. He speaks like he's rehearsed this moment, like he's been waiting for someone in power to challenge him so he can prove how much smarter he is. He insists the court has no jurisdiction. He says the system is illegitimate. He even smiles as he talks, as if this is all some clever game he already knows how to win. But here's what makes this moment dangerous and irresistible to watch. He doesn't realize where he is. He doesn't realize who is sitting in front of him. And he definitely doesn't realize that everything he's saying is pushing him closer to a wall he won't be able to talk his way around. Because Judge Judy doesn't argue philosophy. She doesn't debate internet theories. She doesn't entertain imaginary loopholes. She listens. Quietly. Patiently. And in that silence something starts to shift. The smirk lingers on the man's face, but the energy in the room changes. The confidence that once felt bold now feels reckless. And this is the part no one sees coming. Because what happens next isn't a slow unraveling. It isn't a back and forth. It isn't a debate. What happens next is one of the fastest, most brutal courtroom shutdowns Judge Judy has ever delivered, and it all starts with the fact that this man thought the law was optional. If you believe moments like this matter, if you believe that arrogance shouldn't be louder than accountability, then this is exactly the kind of case you don't want to miss. Stories like this aren't about paperwork or technicalities. They're about watching false confidence collide with real consequences in real time. And this one doesn't slow down. It escalates fast, and the ending is the reason people still talk about it. So if you're here for those moments when the truth cuts through the noise and the courtroom restores balance, stay with us, because what's coming next is where everything starts to crack. The man standing at the defendant's podium looks like he walked into court already convinced he's the smartest person in the room. He's somewhere in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, dressed plainly but deliberately, nothing flashy, nothing careless. The kind of outfit that says he wants to be taken seriously. His posture is rigid, shoulders squared, chin lifted just a little too high. He speaks with an overconfident calm, the tone of someone who believes he's discovered a secret the rest of society is too blind to see. Before Judge Judy can even ask the most basic question, he interrupts. Not aggressively but assertively, like he's correcting a teacher. He doesn't answer directly. Instead, he launches into terminology. Jurisdiction. Standing. Corporate fiction. Admiralty law. Consent. Each word is dropped with rehearsed precision, strung together in a way that sounds impressive on the surface but never quite connects. He speaks fast, as if speed alone can substitute for accuracy. In front of him, stacked neatly on the podium, is a thick binder stuffed with printed pages. Highlighted sections. Sticky notes. Handwritten annotations in the margins. It's obvious he spent hours, maybe weeks, on internet forums and obscure websites, downloading documents that promise immunity from consequences. At one point, he taps the binder confidently, as if the sheer weight of the paper proves his point. To him, this isn't just a case. It's a performance. A chance to show the system that he knows its weaknesses. When Judge Judy asks him to state his name for the record, he smiles faintly and shakes his head. He explains, slowly, deliberately, that he is a living man, not a legal entity. That the name on the paperwork is a corporate fiction. That he does not consent to being addressed under it. The words hang in the air, confusing and self-assured all at once. A few people in the gallery exchange looks. Someone lets out a short, awkward chuckle, unsure whether this is serious or satire. Another person leans forward, clearly trying to follow along, only to give up moments later. The murmurs grow slightly louder, not hostile, just baffled. This isn't the kind of argument most people expect to hear in a courtroom. Judge Judy doesn't interrupt him. She doesn't roll her eyes. She doesn't snap back. She listens. Her expression is neutral but alert. The kind of focus that signals she's already cataloging every word he's saying, not to argue with it but to dismantle it later. She asks him again calmly to answer the question. Again he doesn't. Instead, he pivots, claiming the court has no authority over him because he never entered into a contract with the government. The confidence in his voice doesn't waver. He genuinely believes this is working. That by refusing to play along he's winning. He talks over the judge once more, citing obscure clauses and misunderstood legal principles, each explanation more convoluted than the last. His tone carries a subtle condescension as if he's educating everyone in the room, including the judge herself. By now the bailiff has shifted position. Not threateningly, just attentively. Eyes on the defendant. Body angled slightly closer. The room feels different, not tense but watchful. Like everyone senses that this performance has a limit, and it's approaching fast. Judge Judy finally speaks, her voice steady, controlled. She warns him, not sharply but clearly, that interruptions will not be tolerated. The warning isn't emotional. It's procedural. Professional. But instead of taking the lifeline, the man smiles again. He nods politely as if acknowledging a formality, then continues talking anyway. That's when the murmurs stop. The gallery goes quiet, not because they're confused anymore, but because they realize something important. This man isn't misunderstood. He isn't quirky. He isn't clever. He's deliberately refusing to participate in reality, and he believes that makes him untouchable. And Judge Judy, still composed, still silent for a beat longer than expected, is watching him dig a hole so deep that there will be no room left to argue his way out. The performance he thought would impress the court has done the opposite. What began as overconfidence now feels like provocation. And everyone in the room, including the man at the podium, can feel that the next phase of this case is about to begin. Once the noise settles, Judge Judy brings the courtroom back to something very simple: facts. This is not a philosophical debate. It's not a lecture on government theory. It's a routine case involving a traffic stop, an unregistered vehicle, and multiple unpaid citations that have been ignored for months. No mystery. No conspiracy. Just paperwork, dates, and numbers. The kind of case that usually takes minutes, not arguments. Judge Judy looks directly at the man and asks the most basic question possible. Did you receive the citation? It's the kind of question that requires only one of two answers. Yes or no. Nothing more. The man doesn't answer. Instead, he shifts his weight slightly and launches into another explanation. He claims the document handed to him wasn't valid because it didn't contain what he calls proper lawful identification. He argues that the ticket was issued under a system he does not recognize, written in a name he does not accept, and therefore has no force over him. He speaks calmly, confidently, as if reciting from memory. He insists the citation is nothing more than an offer to contract, and he declined it. Judge Judy asks again. Same question. Same tone. Did you receive the citation? This time he smirks. He says he was handed a piece of paper, but refuses to acknowledge it as a citation. He argues that words matter. That definitions matter. That without his consent, no document can bind him. He gestures vaguely toward the bench, then toward the walls of the courtroom, implying the entire structure is built on deception. The gallery shifts uncomfortably. Someone sighs. Another person mutters under their breath. What should be a straightforward exchange is becoming exhausting to listen to, and that frustration is exactly what the man seems to thrive on. Judge Judy moves on. She asks about the vehicle. Was it registered at the time of the stop? Again, no direct answer. Instead, the man claims that registration is voluntary. That his car is not a vehicle but a private conveyance. That licensing applies only to commercial activity. He insists he was traveling, not driving, and therefore no law was broken. Each sentence sounds rehearsed, sharpened by repetition, polished by hours spent convincing himself this logic is bulletproof. Judge Judy lets him talk just long enough to hang himself with his own words. Then she asks another simple question. Were you on a public road? He hesitates, just for a fraction of a second. Then he answers yes. The pause doesn't go unnoticed. But instead of addressing that crack, he pivots again. He points out the American flag behind the bench. He claims the presence of gold fringe means the court is operating under maritime or military jurisdiction. He says this isn't a real civil court, that it's a corporate tribunal pretending to be something it's not. He accuses the system of fraud, suggesting everyone in the room is complicit, whether they realize it or not. The tension in the courtroom rises not because anyone believes him, but because his refusal to engage with reality feels deliberate and disrespectful. Judge Judy's expression doesn't change, but her questions become more precise. She asks about the unpaid fines. Multiple notices sent. Deadlines ignored. Opportunities to resolve the matter without court intervention. He dismisses all of it. Says notices sent by mail don't count. Says silence cannot be interpreted as agreement. Says the state failed to prove authority before demanding payment. Each dodge stretches the patience of the room thinner and thinner. By now the audience isn't confused anymore. They're irritated. The frustration is palpable. This is no longer entertaining arrogance. It's willful obstruction. The kind that clogs courtrooms and wastes time, all under the illusion of cleverness. Judge Judy asks one final grounding question. Not legal. Not philosophical. Practical. Have you ever paid registration on a vehicle before? The man stiffens. He tries to deflect, saying past actions don't imply future consent. But the hesitation is telling. Because everyone knows the answer, even if he won't say it out loud. The truth is sitting right there, plain and unavoidable. He wants the benefits of society without the obligations. He wants to use public roads, public systems, public protections, without accepting the rules that come with them. And the more he talks, the clearer that becomes. Judge Judy leans back slightly, hands folded. She's not arguing anymore. She's observing. The man continues to accuse the court of illegitimacy, but the words are losing their power. They no longer sound confident. They sound desperate, like someone clinging to a script that isn't working. And this is where the shift truly happens. Because the case has now been stripped down to its core. No theories. No loopholes. Just a man, a public road, an unregistered vehicle, and a refusal to accept responsibility. The frustration in the room isn't just emotional, it's collective. Everyone can feel it. And Judge Judy hasn't raised her voice once. That's what makes what comes next so devastating. The moment Judge Judy begins to speak again, the man lets out a short laugh. Not loud. Not explosive. Just enough to signal that he doesn't take what's happening seriously. It's the kind of laugh that instantly changes the temperature in a room. A few heads in the gallery snap up. Someone exhales sharply through their nose. The sound hangs there, disrespectful and deliberate. Judge Judy starts to clarify the court's authority, but he cuts her off mid-sentence. Not once, twice. He leans forward, palms resting on the podium, and speaks over her as if volume alone can erase her words. You have no jurisdiction over me, he says confidently, almost casually, like he's stating a universally accepted fact. I do not recognize this court. That's when the reaction hits. Audible gasps ripple through the gallery. A woman near the back shakes her head slowly, disbelief written across her face. Another person whispers, "Oh no," under their breath. This isn't confusion anymore. This is recognition. Everyone understands that a line has just been crossed. Judge Judy raises her hand, not dramatically, just enough to stop the noise. Her voice remains calm, but it sharpens. There's an edge now, controlled, precise. She tells him clearly that he will not interrupt her again. She explains that refusing to answer questions and talking over the court is unacceptable behavior. It isn't a debate. It's a warning. For a brief moment it looks like he might take it. He nods, lips pressed together, eyes locked on the bench. The room holds its breath. Then he smiles. It's subtle but unmistakable. The kind of smile that says he thinks the warning is empty. He straightens his papers, taps the binder once, and begins speaking again without being acknowledged. He repeats his claim about jurisdiction, louder this time. He insists that Judge Judy is operating under a false authority. He accuses the court of ignoring constitutional law in favor of what he calls corporate policy. The murmurs return louder now. People shift in their seats. Someone scoffs openly. The bailiff's posture changes, still neutral but more alert. The atmosphere thickens, charged with the sense that this is spiraling quickly. Judge Judy doesn't raise her voice. That's what makes it unsettling. She lets him finish his sentence this time. Then she speaks, slowly and deliberately, explaining that his beliefs, whether sincerely held or not, do not exempt him from the law. She tells him that continuing to interrupt will result in consequences. Real ones. He responds by laughing again. This time the reaction is immediate. Multiple gasps. A sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the gallery. A man in the front row shakes his head more aggressively now, arms crossed. The defendant's laughter isn't nervous. It's mocking. He looks around the room briefly as if enjoying the attention, as if this is the exact confrontation he hoped for. He leans forward once more and says it again, slower, clearer, more defiant. You have no jurisdiction over me. The words land like a challenge. Judge Judy pauses. Not because she's unsure, but because she's letting the weight of the moment settle. Her expression doesn't change, but the silence stretches just long enough to feel uncomfortable. The laughter fades. The smirk begins to falter just slightly. She issues her first formal warning. Not loud. Not emotional. Absolute. She tells him that the court will not tolerate contempt. That his behavior is being noted. That this is his final opportunity to conduct himself appropriately. He nods again, but this time the smile doesn't return. There's something else on his face now, irritation. The confidence that once felt effortless is tightening, hardening into stubborn defiance. Instead of backing down, he doubles down. He accuses the court of intimidation. He claims the warning itself is proof of illegitimacy. He insists that compliance would mean surrendering his freedom. The gallery is no longer amused. Heads shake in unison. The frustration is visible, shared. What started as eccentric arrogance has become outright disrespect, and everyone can feel that the situation is slipping past the point of patience. Judge Judy sits perfectly still, eyes fixed on him, listening as he digs himself deeper. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't argue. She allows him to expose exactly who he is in this moment. Because what he doesn't realize, what he still hasn't figured out, is that every word he's saying is making what comes next inevitable. The moment that changes everything doesn't come with shouting or drama. It comes quietly, almost casually. The defendant straightens his stack of papers one last time, exhales through his nose, and shakes his head as if disappointed. When he speaks again, his tone is no longer defensive. It's dismissive. This whole thing, he says, gesturing vaguely around the courtroom, is just a corporate scam. The words land hard. A low murmur ripples through the gallery, then stops abruptly, as if everyone realizes at the same time that something irreversible has just been said. The man continues, emboldened by his own audacity. He explains that the court isn't real justice, it's theater. That judges don't have power, only titles. That the law is a script people pretend to follow because they're afraid to question it. Then he looks directly at Judge Judy. Not angrily. Not shouting. Confident. You're just playing a role, he says. That's all this is. For a split second, no one moves. Judge Judy doesn't respond. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't correct him. She simply stops. Her pen rests on the desk. Her hands go still. The room feels like it's holding its breath, suspended between what was just said and what everyone knows is about to happen. The gallery is silent now. No murmurs. No sighs. No whispers. Even the people who were visibly frustrated moments ago sit frozen, eyes locked on the bench. The bailiff doesn't shift. Doesn't blink. This isn't confusion anymore. This is recognition. The defendant has crossed from ignorance into outright contempt, and everyone in the room understands the significance of that shift. The man, however, seems oblivious. He continues talking, filling the silence with more accusations. He claims the court exists to extract money. That rulings are predetermined. That judges are actors in robes enforcing contracts people never agreed to. Each sentence is delivered with the smug certainty of someone who believes he's just said something profound. Judge Judy finally looks up. She doesn't rush. She doesn't snap. She studies him, not as a litigant, not as a defendant, but as a person who has fundamentally misunderstood where he is. Her expression is unreadable, but the pause stretches long enough to make the man uncomfortable. His voice trails off mid-sentence. The The confidence he's been clinging to wavers just slightly. She says nothing yet. That silence is heavier than any reprimand. It signals a shift from patience to authority, from tolerance to consequence. The kind of silence that precedes a reckoning. The defendant shifts his weight, clears his throat, glances briefly at his binder as if considering whether to continue. He chooses wrong. He leans forward again and repeats himself, louder this time, insisting the court has no legitimacy. He emphasizes the word roll, almost mockingly as if daring her to react. That's when it happens. Judge Judy lifts her hand slowly. Not to interrupt, but to claim the room. The gesture is subtle but absolute. When she speaks, her voice is calm, steady, and unmistakably final. This, she begins, is not a game. The words cut clean through the air. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't insult him. She doesn't match his tone. She explains plainly and precisely that courts do not exist by consent. That authority is not optional. That pretending otherwise does not make it so. Each sentence dismantles his claims without engaging in them. She refuses to debate his fantasy. Instead, she anchors the conversation firmly in reality. The man tries to interrupt, but she stops him immediately. Her voice sharpens just enough to remind him who controls the room. She tells him that accusing the court of fraud and disrespecting the bench constitutes contempt. She explains that freedom of belief does not include freedom from consequence. And she makes it clear that this behavior will not continue. The gallery remains silent, but the energy has shifted completely. The earlier frustration has transformed into anticipation. People lean forward slightly, sensing the gravity of what's unfolding. The man's posture changes. His arms uncross. His jaw tightens. The smirk is gone. For the first time since he entered the courtroom, he looks unsure. Judge Judy pauses again, just long enough for that realization to sink in. Then she delivers the line that seals his fate, not loudly, not dramatically, but with authority that cannot be challenged. You can believe whatever you want, she says. But in this courtroom, reality applies. The room doesn't erupt. It doesn't need to. Everyone knows they've just witnessed the moment where the argument ends, and the consequences begin. Judge Judy doesn't rush into the takedown. She doesn't raise her voice or stack insults on top of his mistakes. She does something far more devastating. She simplifies. She strips the entire argument down to its bones, removing every layer of jargon and internet mythology until there's nothing left for him to hide behind. She explains jurisdiction the way you would explain gravity. Calmly. Plainly. Unarguably. Courts have authority because laws exist. Laws exist because societies function on rules. And those rules apply whether someone agrees with them or not. She tells him that jurisdiction is not a suggestion and not a contract. It's a framework. One that doesn't disappear just because someone declares independence from it. He tries to interject, opening his mouth to object, but she cuts him off immediately. Not harshly, decisively. She tells him this is not a philosophy class. This is a courtroom. And theories he picked up online do not override statutes, precedent, or common sense. The words hit harder because they're delivered without emotion, without theatrics. Just fact. Then she addresses his favorite shield. Consent. She explains that consent is not required for laws to apply. You don't consent to speed limits. You don't consent to tax obligations. You don't consent to criminal statutes. They apply because you exist within the system that enforces them. Believing otherwise doesn't make it true. It just makes it inconvenient. The man shakes his head, muttering under his breath. His fingers grip the edge of the podium tighter now. The binder he relied on sits untouched, suddenly useless. Judge Judy moves closer to the heart of the case. She explains that driving is not a natural right, it's a regulated privilege. Roads are built, maintained, and governed by the public. Using them comes with obligations. Licensing. Registration. Compliance. She doesn't argue this point. She states it. Then she asks the question. It's simple. Almost gentle. Do you use public roads? For a split second he doesn't answer. The room is silent again, but this silence is different. It's tense. Anticipatory. Everyone knows this is the moment. He hesitates, then answers yes. That's it. Judge Judy doesn't smile. She doesn't react at all. She simply nods once. And in that nod, the entire argument collapses. She explains that by using public roads, he accepts the regulations that govern them. There is no opt-out clause. No loophole. No magic phrase that dissolves responsibility. You don't get to opt out of reality, she says. The line lands hard. Audible applause breaks out from the gallery before anyone can stop themselves. Someone claps once, then twice. Others join in instinctively, quickly silenced by the bailiff, but the message is clear. The room has chosen a side. The bailiff steps slightly closer to the defendant's podium. Not aggressively. Just enough to remind him that this situation is no longer theoretical. His posture stiffens. His shoulders drop. The confidence drains from his face in real time. Judge Judy continues, dismantling what's left. She tells him that his internet research means nothing here. That reading something online does not make it law. That courts do not recognize personal belief systems as exemptions. Each sentence closes a door he thought was open. He tries to speak again, but his voice cracks slightly. He repeats phrases he's used before, but now they sound hollow. Recycled. Desperate. The certainty that once carried his words is gone. Judge Judy doesn't need to argue anymore. She has already won. She explains that the court has jurisdiction because he was cited on a public road, driving an unregistered vehicle, in violation of clearly established law. That's it. No conspiracy. No performance. Just cause and effect. The gallery watches in stunned silence now, not because they're shocked by her ruling, but because they're watching someone realize too late that confidence without understanding is a liability. The man looks down at his binder for the first time, flipping through pages that suddenly mean nothing. His hands tremble slightly. The performance is over. Judge Judy delivers her final line of the shutdown with surgical precision. This court is not interested in what you believe, she says. It is interested in what you did. The words hang there, undeniable. The man doesn't respond. He can't. The logic has boxed him in completely. Every escape route he imagined has been sealed. And for the first time since he walked into that courtroom, he understands the truth he tried so hard to avoid. He was never in control. And Judge Judy made sure everyone saw it. Judge Judy doesn't hesitate. There's no long explanation, no dramatic build-up. The moment the last excuse collapses, the ruling follows immediately. Clear. Direct. Final. She states that the citations are valid, the fines are upheld, and the defendant is responsible for every dollar. The court is not dismissing anything. There is nothing to dismiss. The law has already spoken. She explains that his refusal to comply didn't make the case weaker, it made it stronger. Each ignored notice, each unpaid fine, each deliberate act of defiance added weight to the ruling. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. And choices come with consequences. The defendant opens his mouth, perhaps out of habit, perhaps hoping to salvage something. Judge Judy doesn't let him. She raises her hand slightly and issues a warning, not theoretical, not symbolic. Real. She tells him plainly that any further disruption will be treated as contempt of court. Not a debate. Not a discussion. A fact. The courtroom is silent again, but this time the silence feels complete. Settled. The tension that filled the room earlier has drained away, replaced by a quiet sense of resolution. Heads in the gallery nod almost involuntarily. Someone exhales slowly, as if releasing frustration that's been building since the man first opened his mouth. Judge Judy delivers the final words without raising her voice, without anger, without theatrics. You can call yourself whatever you want, she says. In this courtroom you're subject to the law. That's it. No follow-up. No elaboration. No room for interpretation. The words hit harder than any insult ever could, because they leave nothing to argue against. The man stands there for a moment, frozen. The binder he once treated like armor now rests uselessly on the podium. He doesn't reach for it. He doesn't look at the judge. He doesn't look at the gallery. The confidence that once radiated from him is gone completely. Slowly he gathers his papers. Not neatly. Not carefully. Just enough to move on. His shoulders are slumped now, his posture smaller, as if the weight of the ruling has physically compressed him. The smirk never returns. Neither does the laughter. There are no final words. No speeches. No declarations of independence. He turns and walks away in silence. The bailiff watches him go, expression neutral, ensuring the exit is orderly. The gallery remains quiet, not out of shock, but out of understanding. Everyone knows they've just witnessed something familiar and satisfying. A reminder that no amount of confidence can overpower reality, and no amount of belief can cancel responsibility. Judge Judy doesn't linger on the moment. She doesn't savor it. She simply moves on to the next case as if this were just another entry on the docket. But the impact lingers in the room. The lesson is clear, and it doesn't need to be repeated. The man who walked in believing he was untouchable leaves knowing he was never exempt. The system he mocked didn't need to argue with him. It didn't need to intimidate him. It simply applied the rules as written, and that was enough. And for everyone watching, that's the real payoff. Not the fonts. Not the warnings. But the reminder that authority doesn't need to shout to be absolute. Justice doesn't need to perform to be effective. And in the end, reality always has the final word. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Do you think these so-called sovereign citizen arguments should be allowed in court at all, or do they just waste time and undermine real justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and the debates on cases like this are always intense. And if you want more moments where fake authority collides with real consequences, where confidence without accountability gets exposed in real time, make sure you're subscribed. Because there's no shortage of people who think the rules don't apply to them, and no shortage of courtroom moments that prove otherwise.